Okay, so let's go into the presentation. So my name is Klaus Kääriäinen. I do recognize some familiar names from the chat, or not chat, from the attendee list, but some for people who don't know who I am, I decided to have a kind of introduction slide here. So Klaus Kääriäinen, I currently work in my own company called Chestercraft. I will be opening a little more about Chestercraft in a moment, but in a nutshell, I've been in the game industry since 2009. Working in basically all of the positions in the game industry so far, excluding the programmer position, which I nowadays do as well, but kind of a more formal. I don't have a kind of a job title called programmer, but I guess all the rest have been there. I've shipped multiple titles on mobile, PC, and consoles, and some of my work's been nominated as the Best Creative Achievement of the Year in the Finnish Game Awards and also Best Technological Innovation in the Mobile Game Awards in London. And established and buried multiple game companies, and also I do some risk investments and publishing deals. Either I publish those myself or find a publisher for someone. I also have 3 boys, and in the meantime, when I'm not taking care of the boys or doing games, I love nature and long distance hiking. So that's in a nutshell me. But we are not talking about me today, obviously. We are talking about building a sustainable game studio in competitive markets. And why I wanted to pick this given topic into the kind of as a keynote, as I heard that this is called keynote. Yay! You don't get opportunity to be a keynote speaker that often, so this is nice. But anyhow, so why it's an interesting topic, the sustainable game studio, and especially the word sustainable. Because, well, as we know, anyone can actually build games, anyone can establish a game company and such, but very few are able to manage that and keep it at float and actually have shipped or can be shipping multiple games during a long period of time. So, and there is a reason why the sustainability is kind of growing the importance of it. And that's why I wanted to kind of have the first look into that and share my own experiences and my own thoughts why this given topic is so interesting. But yeah, so what does sustainable game studio mean? Maybe very shortly for people, if I'm using fancy words or something, what a sustainable game studio means is that it is able to produce game after game without going bankrupt or some other reason to not be able to make games. So that's why that's what I mean with sustainable game studio. But let's start by dropping some triggering thoughts here, because I like to kind of come in with my guns blazing. So your game will not be successful, and that's the starting point of everything. It's more or less something that you kind of need to prepare for. It doesn't mean that you need to kind of accept the fact that each of your games will not be successful, but it's something that you need to prepare for and something you need to be prepared for, because if you don't do that, it's gonna be a very messy ride for you to be able to actually ship games now or in the future. This may sound like a rant from an unsuccessful game developer, but I've done some homework during the past years, let's say so, and actually done some homework before this given speak. So I'm gonna next up show you some data. So let's look at some data from Steam, because I guess most of the people here are PC gamers, as many of the game developers are. You can obviously prove me wrong if there is mobile gamers or dedicated console players, but I dare to say that most of the people are PC gamers in this given room. But yeah, prove me wrong. That would be a pleasant surprise. So let's look at the data from Steam from 2024, because that's obviously available now because the year has changed. So we have data available from last year. Alone in Steam, there were 19,000 games released last year, which equals around 1,585 games per month, 52 games per day, and 2 games per hour being released on Steam. And that's, by the way, a 32% increase from the year 2023. So that's a big increase in 1 year. And remember, this is Steam only. Obviously, Steam is not the only marketplace we have available, but it is the biggest. I guess approximately 60% of PC games is being released on Steam. But yeah, the rest 40% is split around different platforms. But let that sink in for a while. 19,000 games in 1 year on Steam only. And with that in mind, how could anyone release a game that is financially successful? Within these 19,000 games that were released on Steam last year, 15,000 of those games were called as the limited games. And what does a limited game mean? It's basically a game which wasn't able to get the Steam benefits, including the trading cards or such, because they didn't get enough revenue or enough players for Valve to give them that permission, which in a nutshell means that they didn't generate good revenue. There's also the numbers for limited games increase per year. So starting from 2018, when the percent was 33%, and nowadays 2024, it was 79%. So 80% of the games is considered as limited games. What that means is 20% of games released on Steam actually generate some or good or very good revenue, and the rest, 81%, is not doing that. So in that given metric, around 15,000 games were not successful, and these are considered as limited games, which means in a nutshell that those games didn't receive enough revenue, and that's obviously an algorithm from Valve, so they have kind of this number in place. Whatever is the number that how a game is called limited or how it gets that tag, I don't have the exact fact for that, but the fact is that it didn't generate enough revenue for Valve to be able to list it as a non-limited game. So, which leads us to the consideration that only 4,000 games generated some or very good revenue. That means 21% of games released on Steam did this on year 2024. So that's a pretty low amount of games, considering it was 19,000 games. So only 21% of those generated good revenue. So does that mean that the 21% of the games were some kind of a AAA games or just some lucky indie games maybe? Or where did they come from? 1% of the games released on Steam is a AAA game, and the rest of the releases are considered as an indie release. So 99%, if someone didn't do the math, 99% of the games released on Steam are considered as indie games. So indie games are currently making as much revenue as AAA games when combined all the sales. So the 1% of Steam, 1% of AAA games released on Steam generate almost as much revenue as the rest 99% of the games released, which are the indie games. But what is an indie game? I think everyone here has their own opinion or thought or such, but let's stop for a moment. What is an indie game? I took this from an Wikipedia article, and what is an indie? It's defined as an indie video game or indie game, short for independent video game, is a video game created by individuals or smaller development teams without the financial and technical support of a large game publisher, in contrast to the most AAA games. All right, so that's an indie game. But I feel that something isn't right here. So let's take a closer look of the indie games that are released on Steam and that are categorized as indie games on the Steam platform. Indie game such as Baldur's Gate 3 development budget was around $100 to $200 million. As an example of a small indie game which doesn't have the support from a AAA studio. Whereas in comparison, there's a AAA studio called Game Science, which developed the game Black Myth Wukong. And the development budget, as an estimate from Black Myth Wukong, was $43 million. So it's less, and it's considered as an AAA game. So what does it mean? What does this basically mean? Is it good news or what? But what it tells us is the indie game development is the new norm. Or is it? But as we are looking at the numbers, it very much seems so that the AAA is kind of fading away, and there is not going to be such a thing soon enough as a AAA games, or at least when looking at the numbers. So we're in the middle of an indie revolution, where the indie term should be considered as the new norm, and the word indie doesn't mean what it has meant anymore or before. It's just how games are made. So is it good news? It makes you think. So if everyone is called as an indie, so how can you separate from the rest? What are the excuses next? Because it's been rather easy to just say that the AAA studios have a big budget and they're able to do that, and we small indies cannot do that. So do we need a new definition for small companies or startups that are making games? Local Thunk, not sure if you know the developer, but it's the developer of Balatro. It's a solo person. Generated around 4.2 million revenue in 2024 alone. The development budget for Balatro is unknown, as an example, but it is made by one person in 2.5 years. So I would say that this is good news. The game industry is in a very, very interesting position right now. The meaning of indie is shifting, AAA project budgets lower than the indie games, and sole persons making insane profits from their games. To me, it seems that the possibility for anyone are endless right now. You don't need a big team, and you don't even need a big budget or like a AAA studio to become successful. But it comes with a challenge. Like mentioned, how can you differentiate in today's market? How can you get enough exposure for your indie game, or let's say in quotation marks for your indie game? Unfortunately, no one has a recipe for that. When referencing the words said by the Balatro developer, I expected 4 friends and my parents to buy the game. Do you think he had a grand plan in his marketing strategy or market research or such? He did not. The Playstack did, which was the publisher of Balatro. Since it's hard for anyone to predict which game is a success and which is not, you need to be prepared to release multiple titles before finding the market fit. To make that into reality, we should be looking more into sustainability of a game company. And that's why we are here. This is the things that you're told to do, and do this very good. And obviously, these are very, very important stuff. But what most of the, or let's say many of the developers miss here is that you are supposed to be doing a lot of these. You're not supposed to be doing one very good marketing strategy or very good game, or in this given project, you need to be very efficient. You need to be looking away kind of longer than that. You need to be building a studio that is actually able to ship multiple of those games and learn on the go. If you have a small team, you don't need that much of revenue, big investment rounds or massive publishing deals to keep that it afloat. But when the team size increases, so does the requirement for the games to be hit games. Whoa, I'm missing a slide here. So when you launch a game, you should already be on your way to release another one. So I think you heard the kind of a saying that putting your eggs into one basket metaphor is making a lot of sense now. You should not do it. I know you will fall in love with your creations. I know that those are even referenced as your children at some point, but the games are obviously not your children. You should consider each of these as a data source for your journey. The lab rats you set free in the wild, or as a bullet in your magazine. However the launch goes, it will provide you data to understand the ongoing market more efficiently. Even if it's a hit, you need to understand why, and especially if or when it's a failure. We've seen companies making hit games but struggling for years to find another one. It may feel like an easier setting to make games, but actually it isn't. It can even be quite the opposite. Because you're no longer free with your decisions and such, you are more or less kind of responsible for the stakeholders and also for the fans and such that have found your previous game as a hit. It's also a part of the journey which many of the company owners face in their career in case they continue to make game after another. So that's also kind of if looking like very long ahead, you may see that you are going to make a success game at some point, so why not prepare that from the start? But you need to get the data, you need to learn the data, you need to own the data. And that, my friends, is also the whole platform for building a sustainable game company. We're going to be digging a little deeper into the data part of this discussion. Not sure how many people kind of have some grasp or some understanding in the data and how it functions and where do you get that and where can you use it and such. But I'm going to be more or less talking a lot about data in this given presentation. But with data, it may also be maybe even a curse word for someone because you may be here just to make games, have fun developing games and such. But we need to loosen our grip from our artist hats a little and lift our gaze towards the markets we are living in. Because each of these data sources or the game releases or the lab rats or the bullets or what do you want to call it, but anyhow, the game release that you do is one single brick to our foundation. And to be honest with you, you will need a truckload of these bricks, aka game releases. So the possibilities are endless, but with data, we are able to form some kind of a canvas for our work. And when talking of that artist hat that you may be wearing, you, with that artist hat, will still need some kind of a canvas that you are working in. Because if the possibilities are endless, there are so many ways that you can actually screw up. Because you're just kind of shifting in different kind of interesting opportunities and such, which may lead you kind of on a crash course rather suddenly. The idea is that we are not losing the grip from our artistic freedom by doing this. We are helping each artistic soul to have even some canvases for their work. Because there are a heck a lot of opportunities that you can take. But if you're planning on making your own canvas, your focus that you're going to be working, you're going to be needing data for that. And obviously, when starting your first company, you don't have much of a data to kind of shoot. So you first need to be focusing into understanding the ongoing markets, because no one else does know that how your market is behaving than you. If you are making a specific genre game and you're focusing into specific, let's say, platform or anything, it's going to be your data. You're going to understand that place better than anyone. Unless, obviously, you are within a very competitive market already, such as making free-to-play mobile games. You obviously can Google a lot of information about that, but it's so competitive place that you should not be there in a moment, let's say so. But yeah, so the data works as your tool to form the canvases. Get the data, and with that, you're more able to understand your direction you should be going. Because without the data, I need to say that in today's market, the kind of situation may happen pretty quickly that you don't even get any kind of a visibility for your actions, because you don't have any proof of your ongoing, or you don't have any metrics to look at, or you don't even know what you're trying to do, or what metrics you're trying to improve and such. So it's very easy to just do some random stuff and then kind of cry out loud to see that nothing happened and such, but you don't even have the understanding what you tried to do in the first place. So that's why you need a focus. And if you do that through data, you're going to be making much more better decisions in the future the longer you focus on the data, and longer you learn it, and longer you gather it. But still, even though you do this kind of stuff, you're going to be failing. You're going to be failing a lot. And failing is okay. It's just business as usual. And that kind of leads us to one of the most important things in kind of building the sustainable game studio as well, is that you need to understand like this very clearly, that failing is okay and you're going to be failing, because that's going to happen a lot. And there's too many developers out there who are building a single game, and they have all bets on the given game, and they love it, and they think that everyone else will love it as well. But in the end, they are not able to get enough of exposure for the game, and the game dies within a week after a release. And that's a very demotivating place to be in. But it isn't if you have the data available and you understand that why it happened, where you screw up, and also you have the data to show you that what you should do next and what are the better decisions for the next round. So don't be afraid to fail. It's the major part of this business we are working in. And you're not supposed to be doing everything right on the first go. So do your homework as well as you can, and give those pricks all your love, each of those game releases. Obviously, kind of you are supposed to be loving your projects, but the kind of it's a fine line between loving too much and loving just enough to get good quality games, but not falling too much of a love that you are able to let it go if it fails, or you see another reason that why you shouldn't be developing it anymore. You should always be prepared for the next round of development. So failing makes you better and stronger. And in case, or let's say that most likely, all of us have failed a lot in life, and I would say that the kind of game industry is the temple of failure. It's all about that, and it's been increasing like since 2018 or something, when we saw those limited games. So it's more obvious that you will fail than it has been ever before. But always the failing needs to happen with the purpose. And like mentioned, you need a clear focus that you're focusing on, you're trying to test something, and you understand what you're trying to do. And if it goes south, you understand that what you tried and what you shouldn't do again, as an example. So test your focus, do everything you can for it, but also understand that at some point you just need to let go and look at the data and see the next steps that you should be focusing in. Which leads us to the final topic. How do you build an environment which enables you to make one game after another to obtain that data? Because it's easy to just say that, just make a lot of games, but we're supposed to be eating, sleeping, and stuff like that. So there's also kind of how do you do that? How can you actually build a sustainable game studio that is able to do that release after another? First of all, like mentioned, keep the team small. Like mentioned, I hate to say it, but it's still something that you need to kind of do from the start. Big teams are also maybe even a rule for a failure. And that's just math. If you're building a big team from the start, it means that each of your games needs to be a big hit that you're able to actually carry that team to the end and to the next development phase and such. So keep the team small. But it's not the most important factor, even though it would be great to have a lot of people involved in the game development. It's still increasing the budgets and risks in each release, so just don't do that. So the second thing, keep yourself focused. So because there's so many distractions and around the route when you're working with your game company. Those offer new shiny opportunities, or as an example, generate cash flow for your game company. But I guess your dream is to make games, not some side products or projects just to generate cash flow. So if your dream is just to build a sustainable game studio, no matter the methods, it's a whole different journey. It's not a wrong type of a journey, but it will not include that much of creating your IPs. Just keep that in mind. As an example, like outsourcing work and such, it's tempting to do if you're running out of money and such, but it's also something that comes with the downside. Because if you're making games, that should be your priority. And if you're running out of money, you need to be raising more, not fill your days with gigs that deplete your energy in doing the actual work. I know it's tempting, because you're going to be keeping your company alive. But it's a risky road to take, since it may continue for years to come. Why, you say? I mentioned earlier that you fall in love with your games and consider those as your children. It has happened for me, it has happened for many of the developers out there. But the same can easily happen with your companies. You'll find yourself trying to keep it alive as long as possible, no matter what you need to do. Just remember, it's okay to fail. It's okay to file a bankruptcy and start a new one. It's just business as usual. I can even recall a veteran game developer saying to me in a sauna that he don't take seriously any game developer who haven't filed a bankruptcy in his life. So it's just business as usual. And fresh starts are the most motivating ones, especially if there was an actual reason for that. But to understand the reason, you also need to know what you were aiming for the first place. Actually, let's take one back. So companies could, or maybe even should, consider it as programmed systems. You form a strategy, a plan, and resources to execute that. Then you press run and go see it through. Did it fail? Most likely yes. Build another system and start it again. Obviously, running a game company is not that simple, but the metaphor may help you to keep your focus in working with your game company. The only difference between the second system that you build it is that it has much more data to build from. It has much more clear canvases you can work in. You're not entangled with all the company complexity in trying to keep the company alive. And I know this is a triggering way to put this, since by saying so, I'm pretty much hurting a lot of company owners here. But it's still something that I feel I've done myself, and I feel that many of the company owners have done also, that they established a company for themselves to make games, but they find themselves after years working in some whole different projects just because they wanted to keep the company alive. Because I've been such a game company owner myself. I've had my own digital children, if I may say, and it's a painful road. But most of the pain comes from my own pride. The pride that kept me going and wanting to show that I will prevail. But the fact is that no one is interested in that. It was just me and the rest of the proud company owners. So game development in general should be seen as a journey of discovery. It's not that much about the end goal, it's about the process. It's about building that process as enjoyable as you can for you and for your team. I cannot kind of say this too much, but still kind of many of the game developers out there are kind of reaching for that success game, and they sacrifice a lot from their kind of let's say values, and maybe even sacrifice from their time and such, just to get that successful game on done. But what they kind of are missing there is the whole journey, and that's the whole thing in the game industry, that you're just supposed to be building a place that you're able to do that game after another, because it may take a very long time before you're able to find that. And ask for help, because most of you, I think, here are students. You may not have that much of a data to understand and build those systems, but you have experienced mentors and professionals all over the place. So use their expertise. Like, for real, do that. I guess that most of you won't still do that, since you want to experience yourself and you want to succeed by yourself. But still, do it. Ask for help. There are I've educated so many people in the game industry, and I know it, that most of you won't still ask for help. But please, do it. There is a possibility that you get a kind of a game out that gets a success right from the start. There is a possibility for that, and you don't need help for that. That's a possibility. But it doesn't mean that listening to experienced people will not help you. Like, it's a thing that you should be doing anyway. Because there is no right answer. Even though if you would make that first success game, I would say that you are even more fucked than you would be with failing your game. Because when the money comes into the company, it's gonna bring a lot of hassle as well. So don't expect it to be some kind of a goal that every problem will get solved and such. It's not that. So ask for help, and with that, you're most likely to dodge some of those foxholes that are on the way. And I have to say that it's a graveyard out there. There's so many holes that you can fall into, and just by asking for help, even in the simple things, you may dodge a hole or two. Do not step into that. But just remember that you're not supposed to be taking all of my thoughts or all from the upcoming mentor's thoughts or basically anyone's thoughts for granted. But there's always something that you can learn from each one. Learn from others, but aim to build your own journey. Don't just follow some other tracks, since I'm pretty sure that the train has left the station already. And also remember that the whole Finnish game industry is backing you up here and hoping that you are able to build that sustainable game company. You just need to ask, listen, take your notes, and form your own system to try out. Press that run in your own system. And remember also that in this industry, there is no competition, since everyone benefits from each success. If a game succeeds in Finland, it'll turn the heads of an investors to the Finnish gaming companies as well, or maybe straight towards Kajaani. So it's an industry where everyone is having their own journey, also different, all with their epic war stories and adventures to be shared. So let's build your story as well, but remember to build it together. I could just go talking ages of this, but I think I'm going to be starting wrapping this up so we can go to the actual discussion part. So, in case you want to hear more about game development and business related content, feel free to subscribe to YouTube and such on Chestercraft page. If this is something or you want to hear more or such, go ahead and do that. I'm a solo game developer myself. I'm kind of discovering different ways to be able to actually be, let's say, have a manageable solo game development company. I'm sharing that journey as transparent as possible on the given site. So maybe that's something that you may be interested in listening. But hey, this is now time for the questions part, and I would love to hear it from you. So don't be shy with the questions. I will at least try my best to answer everything that you have in your head.
All right. Yes. Thank you. Klaus, can you see the questions in the chat? You can, or do you want me to read those for you?
Yeah, I can see the on the third screen, but there's only 2 questions as I'm aware of. So please go ahead and drop your thoughts. It doesn't even need to be a question, just your thought. Maybe you want to question me or just say something that came up to your head and such. Please do that. But in the meantime, let's answer those 2 questions. And please go ahead and write your own. Don't be shy. It's okay to ask. There's no silly questions. There will be silly answers.
Yeah, and I'm also keeping an eye on the people who raised their hands, so feel free to do that as well, or type in, whichever is better.
All right. But let's go. Maria from the Game Crow team asks that what sort of the data do you mean and what tools can be used to acquire it? Should the games have built-in analytics or EAA sales numbers and review enough? It highly depends on the platform that you are working in. In case you are making a mobile game, as an example, you cannot live a day without in-game analytics. So you need that first in hand for every release that you do, the soft launch and even the early releases and such. You need the data in there. And I have a feeling that it's landing for PC and consoles as well, that we are going to be finding ourselves in looking at the data on the PC games and such as well. But right now, it's, let's say, in Steam, it's, as an example, there are, I don't even know, is there anyone tracking in-game data? It's basically the store. You can track the user until he or she purchases the game. But after that, you're pretty much looking at just to the numbers, that how long do they play and how often do they play and such. But that's about it. But personally, I kind of like to build a pipeline for the data to actually understand each step that the user is taking before they make the purchase for a game. I want to understand where the traffic comes from, what kind of stuff is working, and what kind of stuff is not, and such. And I want to understand kind of from day to day, optimize me working with the stuff that actually work rather than banging my head to a wall. So that's why answer to your question would be that, as an example, the Steam itself offers rather good analytics. You can also add the Google Analytics to your Steam page to have more better analytics in place. And you can see the traffic from where the users come from and such from the Steam itself. But when talking about mobile games, it's pretty much the data that you're going to be looking at is the user acquisition campaigns that you do As an example, in meta platforms like Facebook and Instagram, you're going to be looking at the data that how does your ads work and how much users do they generate and such. And then you're going to be looking at the cost of install as an example, how much do they pay to get one user to your game and such. So in a nutshell, if you're working for a mobile game, the data is everything. But if you're working with PC games, it's not that important, but like very important still. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing answer. Martin is asking that what are your opinions on reaching out to IP holders to offer to remaster games along the lines of Next Dive and recently Bluebird Team? I need to say that that's a very good idea, Martin. Maybe even one kind of a very good opportunity to compete in today's market if you're able to actually get a good deal from some IP holder, because obviously they're not going to give it for free, most likely. But that could be if you actually find some very good, let's say, good priced IP that has a solid user base that are waiting for a new release or such. It can be a very good opportunity to actually compete in today's market. So the question was that what are my opinions? I think my opinion is that it sounds good. Go for it. Antti is asking that what do you think about targeting specific audiences on Steam to increase the chances of success? Let me read that again. What do you think about targeting specific audience? Okay. It's pretty much everything. It's the most important thing in the whole thing. If you're not targeting a specific audience, you are just doing a lottery ticket. But if you are targeting to a specific audience, you at least know some of the right numbers for the lottery already. So, but yeah, it's basically everything. If you don't have a clear target or target audience that you're focusing the game, it's gonna be a shit show. And there was actually there's actually very good articles. I can get you that, and also a YouTube video and such, looking at the kind of different tags and what kind of genres did work in Steam last year and such. So you should most definitely Google that a little, because there's so much data available that people have shared that what are the best genres and most competitive genres, because obviously you want to dodge the most competitive genres when you're making your first game. And Martin asks another one. Would you recommend waiting for a lull in game releases to drop your game online? I'm not sure do I understand. A game release to drop your game online. A lot of devs are doing at the moment with GTA 6 by waiting for a release date before announcing theirs. Right, I get it. It's. I'm trying to figure out some clear, short answer into this rather than having 5 hours of discussion on the given topic. But very good question, Martin. And the kind of a release date is a big thing, obviously, when you're releasing a premium game. And by premium game, I mean a game that costs before the user is able to play it. And that's pretty much everything is on your launch week or launch weeks. But at the same time, remember that the kind of all the work is still done up front. It doesn't mean that when you release a game, the work starts for the next 2 weeks. You're going to do a lot of marketing. You already have the shit in your pants if you're waking up to the marketing on the release date. So I'm saying that everything for the marketing is done way before the launch date. But yeah, that's still the day that will determine that does it work or not. And highly depends, as an example, like what games are released on the same date. Is I think the biggest kind of a thing in Steam is that if you, as an example, wanna get to the new popular releases page on the Steam, it highly depends how much other games sell on that given day. So if there is a big game or big games being released on the same day, or maybe even a couple of days before or after, staying on the popular new releases page will be unlikely unless you get very good sales. So that's why you wanna kind of dodge the days when there is a lot of big games being released. And if you are one of those big games, if you're not one of those big games, but anyhow, it's a big factor in getting the algorithm to wake up, because if you don't get enough sales within 2 weeks after the release, the algorithm will just kill your game. Teemu is asking that you mentioned that big teams might be risky. It's subjective, but do you consider a big team? No, I don't consider a big team. That's not my intention anymore. Or let's put it more clear. Right now, it's not my intention to have a big team. It's quite the opposite. And reason for that is just because I'm more into building games that I, let's say, expect not to be hits. Let's say it that way. So if I have a team, I'm responsible of their well-being and their paycheck and such. I've been there, I've done that, and not my cup of tea. So I wanna only be responsible of myself and my kids, not a big team.
Sorry to jump in here. I think Teemu meant what number of people would you consider to be a big team?
Oh, now when reading it again, that's it. Yeah. But I wanted to answer that question. That was I wanted to do that. But anyhow, what is a big team? Everything above 5. Just throwing the number out of my head, but 5 is already a very big team. I would go something like 3 or 4, but 5 would be the maximum for myself. Jonas is writing that, so I'm developing a game which is going to be very cool. It has hero of X who is doing Y, and the core game loop is Z, and very awesome. I'm on the ideating phase. How can I decide on what target audience I target my game, and how to tailor the game to it I will eventually get sales? Wow. How much time do we have? Maybe in a nutshell for Jonas's question, I'm trying to put in a nutshell. This may be a very bad idea, but I will try it anyhow. It's the other way around. So if you already have a design on the table and then you're starting to think that who you're gonna be targeting the game for, it's already fucked up. So it's the other way around. First, you discover the potential markets and the niches and the places that actually have a market opportunities, or are not too competitive enough, but still have a good amount of users there. And there has not been very big releases on the given genre for some time, as an example. And then you start designing game around that. So I just park it there. Hopefully that was a good answer. Sepi is asking that I'm a mobile gamer myself, and I even own a gaming phone. Wow. I would like to make a mobile games because I like the platform, but I think I'll stick to art stuff, freelancing maybe. Just wanted to say that, but anyway, how nice lecture. Thank you. Yeah, it's totally good way to just say that what is your thing, and you're gonna be working with art and such. But I just want to kind of remind in that if you have a feeling that you want to work with games and such, nowadays you don't need much of programming understanding to make games that are more art focused, and there's actually a core focus groups for that as well, like who play these kind of games. So there's a lot of potential to be uh, making your art, but make it in a way that you can call it a game. So you should definitely try that as well. Visual novels, but that's also a lot of more different ways to do that as well. I think Jonas just asked some question there, so I'm not gonna read that out loud, or do I?
Oh, I was just chatting with Maria there, thinking about getting data
All right,
for
all right, yeah.
the Steam games through the achievements, but I think I missed some crucial information. Yeah, I think the next question is from Kettunen, or no?
Yeah,
That's also
yeah. Try to target an audience, but don't go for too niche. You need to make a game with points that people can associate with from other games, but differentiate enough to have point to sell. That's a
yeah, no,
very
that
very
would
good wrap up. Like how you're supposed to be doing that. It, there needs to be some bold moves as well, because you can just go ahead and be like gray, gray goo, like no one cares a shit, because you don't need really kind of wake up any opinions on anyone. So don't be gray goo. Be kind of you still need to have your own thing and be kind of rather bold with it. So yeah, going for a niche, not being too niche. It's easy to say that how you actually do that, and I would say that kind of your kind of a twist, your own twist in that, and your own boldness in the design as an example. And I'm not talking about boldness about the scale of the game. I'm more kind of the idea of the game and what kind of things you're combining as an example. What kind of a genres you're taking together and putting into the game and having that like something that actually people find as new. Um, Marcus is asking that, do you have experience using marketing companies to sell games compared to using current social influencers such as YouTubers and Twitch streamers? Do you have an opinion on which one is better to use nowadays? Oh, so marketing companies. I'm not 100% sure that what is a marketing company, but most likely you mean some kind of a company that is selling their services to do social media marketing and such. That may be the thing. But in case it is that, I would say that highly depends on the price and their promises, because there may be. I was about to say that don't do it, but obviously there are good companies as well, but there's so much of scams and kind of shitty promises and such in the marketing agencies, especially if they don't have any background in doing some actually good marketing campaigns for games. They may have done some good marketing campaigns for websites and such, but they don't have expertise in marketing games. So if you're looking for a marketing company, just make sure that they have some track record in doing marketing with games, because yeah, it's a whole different world. But speaking of which, the YouTubers and Twitch streamers, it's also a very competitive place to get the attention of YouTubers and Twitch streamers nowadays, and it can become like very manual work. There are like pages like Keymailer as an example, which helps you to contact the influencers and such. And but I would say that having kind of a personal contact on the influencers or YouTubers and such is the maybe best way to go. Obviously, it's the most time consuming, but they are people as well. There are kind of many influencers out there who work solo, so they want to kind of have some contact as well for the game development team or such that they are gonna be making the content too. So kind of a personal contact for these solo persons, as an example, is much better. And it may even be enough to have just very good influencer marketing campaign in place. For some games, it can already be enough. You don't even need that much kind of external marketing than having the influencers in place. But it doesn't mean that each of the games is a good influencer fit. Some games are more influencer friendly and some games don't. And there are at least two things that I find from that is that they are entertaining their own audience. So is your game entertaining to watch? All games are not, so don't take that for granted. And also remember that they're trying to make money as well, so they may want to ask you some money from the covering and such, or don't kind of expect them to just do good stuff for you only because you have a good game, because they're making business as well. Where's the next question? Or is there? Oh, there you go. So speaking of a project, well, yeah, there is if you're making MMOs, wow, it's yeah, obviously you are able to make MMOs and such. I'm kind of trying to think that how do I put this, because well, most likely your first game will not be an MMO, but why not? Obviously you can do that and find a funding for it and such, and have a very good idea and such. But if you are planning on doing something that you're going to be working with team of 15, you need someone in your team who is a master in business and master in sales talk and master in convincing people and such, because someone needs to get the funding, and as a new timer, a new game company, you're going to be having a hard time to get any funding for anything that you're going to be working with. So first you need some releases under your belt before anyone considers you as an actual developer. So maybe that's why I'm kind of hesitated to answer the question or this thought in here. Yeah, Kimpa is continuing. The important part is knowing your team and having a good team that understands what is it that you are supposed to do. Amen. Martin is asking that would it be more of a risk to release a VR game since the player base is smaller, or would it be worth the risk as not as many VR games are released per day on Steam, so it may be easier to be noticed? Wow, these questions are like very good, but the problem with these questions also is that I could have a whole course on the given topic, so then I just need to answer you under a minute. But the VR games is in an interesting position right now. For Steam, the VR games are, let's say, some games work very good, but there are a lot of genres and a lot of kind of games that you shouldn't be putting into Steam, rather for PlayStation VR2 or places like that. But it really depends on the design, that what kind of a VR game you're planning to do. And for that, I cannot give you any detailed like kind of what is the game and such, but you should dig into the data and see what kind of games VR games sell on Steam, and kind of try to find a niche in that as well, because only just making a VR game doesn't differentiate enough. You need to dig deeper into that as well. Which games are good for console and which games are good for Steam and such. But yeah, VR games are still rather small market, and there are no like very big players conquering the market. So there's a lot of space for people to make games and earn that small team cash out from those releases. There's a possibility, but just look like what kind of a game you're working in Steam and what kind of a game should be on consoles. So maybe that's my short answer. Eero is asking that how do you usually reflect on your own thoughts of game design as an indie dev? How do you usually reflect on your own thoughts? Where currently I'm reflecting those thoughts to put up a YouTube video, or I will record an Instagram video or such and put it out loud. So because I'm kind of in the middle of trying to be as transparent as possible with my solo game development journey, so I'm kind of doing that as well. So I pretty much share my reflections and thoughts on YouTube and Instagrams and such. So maybe that's the answer to your question. So I just record them in some format and but also release those.
All right. I suppose we didn't specify how long these were supposed to be, but 1 hour was sort of the what we were aiming for, and we are a bit over time.
Probably instead of reflecting, show the design to anyone else. I don't understand. Sorry. Probably instead of reflecting, show the design to anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, instead of going it over in your own head, get a second opinion from somebody
Right.
else.
Okay. Right.
That's
Yeah.
I would also say to do that, especially if you've been working on a
Okay, cool.
design for
So I've
longer.
run through the questions, and maybe it's kind of a time for the wrapping up words before we start wrapping this up. So as this is kind of the keynote, I guess the first, was it first keynote?
Yep.
Jonas, help me.
Yeah, first one.
Oh shit, my headphone has turned off. Sorry, I didn't hear your answer, but I hear
know.
it now. Please say it again.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, this was the first keynote, and we are
Cool.
indeed a little bit over time.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be dropping my last thoughts here. So since this is the first keynote and kind of from the business side of making games, I just want to kind of say that it's gonna be a long road for you to learn. And as we look at the data, there is a like high possibility that you cannot find the market fit games, or you cannot kind of be able to continue releasing games and such. That's a high chance. But I just need to say that kind of as long as you are trying to make games as a living, I feel that many of the game developers out there are more or less artistic souls and not that business-oriented people, and that's okay. That's totally okay. But kind of what you will face or have faced already is that because of the competition in the market, you may feel or you may start to feel that the kind of creativity is dying in the game industry, and that's in some way true, because we are kind of seeing the pop culture of game industry. So the pop culture is the stuff that you hear when you turn on the radio on your car. But if you want to find something a little more different than the radio pop songs, you need to actually search for the game. And there are plenty of people who still do that. But the problem is that there is so much noise in the game industry that the kind of actually getting the exposure and actually getting someone on your Steam page as an example and actually giving them the clear idea what is the game and why it is for you is more important than ever. And that's why you need the clear target, like I mentioned in the speak, and you need the clear target you are making the game for, and those canvases that you can use your creativity and make those ultimate, even different games. But you still need that canvas only because you need to be able to show the user that this game is for him. So don't get too crowded of the pop culture. It's there. It's gonna grow. The game industry is gonna be big because of the pop culture, but it doesn't mean that you need to kill your creative freedom. You're still able to do that, but you just need to focus a little into some more specific genres or such to be able to get that exposure. But yeah, that's my final thoughts on the given topic. And thank you so much for listening. 40 people on the first keynote. That's awesome. I will